or a world-changing moment, a real sign of a crisis of capitalism. Joined in the studio by Tim Knox, Director of the Centre for Policy Studies, down the line by Anastasia Nesvetai-Lova, who is a political economist at City University and sits on John McDonnell's advisory committee. Good afternoon to you both.
Good afternoon.
Anastasia Nesvetai-Lova, on a scale of 1 to 10, how grave is this scandal?
Difficult to say. I would give it between 6 and 7.
Why? Why so serious?
It's a combination of factors. It's certainly not the first leak from financial secrecy jurisdictions. It's not the first leak exposing public figures, politicians, celebrities, and their connections to tax havens and offshore structures. But it seems to be quite ample in terms of its data, granularity, and what can be dug out of it. At the same time, I'm not giving it a 10 because Panama is just one of the few jurisdictions, and it's the firm in question is only one of the many law firms operating in the country. So it's certainly not the full story of the whole significance of tax havens for the global economy.
Tim Knox, what would your answer to that question I pose be? Is this a blip or is it a world-changing moment?
I think it is a dangerous moment, but we shouldn't take it too far. Firstly, capitalism is remarkably resilient. There have been crises of capitalism every decade for the last 200 years, and it always seems to struggle on. Secondly, it is dangerous because it does play into this prevailing sense that there is an us and a them, and it is all desperately unfair. So people do respond to this kind of revelation with a certain understandable anger.
Anastasia Nesvetai-Lova, what's your view of that last point? I mean, presumably you would share the view that it's unfair, and you would hope that that would turn into a real political movement of some kind.
Well, yes and no, in the sense that it has turned into a political and civil movement some time ago. My fellow colleagues, academics, and some civil society groups such as TGM, they have been campaigning against tax havens for decades. And the real distinguishing moment now is that today it did make a lot of noise. It just, as you said, it keeps on giving. Whereas 20 years ago, few were interested. It wasn't a mainstream topic. You wouldn't get discussed even in conferences. And it certainly wasn't a very rife political issue. So today the context is vastly different. Well, in terms of unfair of capitalism, capitalism is supposed to be unequal as an economic system, but that's why you have politics to govern it, to make it more survivable for the people.
But Tim Knox, you make the point that capitalism has been through a few bumps and seems to have adapted okay, which is an argument commonly made by champions of capitalism. How would you expect the system, if you like, to adapt to this?
I think we should look at how politics has been unfolding in the last 8 years across Western democracies. And you can see in America, you've got the rise of Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders. You've got populist parties across Western Europe, in Holland, Germany, Spain, and above all, of course, in Greece, where for once a populist party of the far left, campaigning on a very strongly anti-capitalist message, did win power. The interesting thing is that once they had won power, they actually have rode back from a lot of their previous rhetoric. So,
but let me, drill down to the question I asked you. What would you expect people to do in the light of the way politics has changed as a result of the kind of thing we've seen this week?
I think politicians have a...
And corporations, I'm asking about. And,
Well, I'll come on to corporations, but politicians actually need to address this sense of capitalist failure. Our current generation does seem to be very reluctant to talk in ideological terms, and it's all very managerial. Jeremy Corbyn is actually a welcome antidote to that trend, and it'd be interesting to see how those on the centre-right can actually make an argument based on ideology as opposed to the practical benefits of capitalism.
Well, let me. Forgive me, because we're heading towards the end of the programme, and I want to hear a bit more from Anastasia. What's your view of the way that, for example, the Labour Party in this country can capitalise on all this?
Well, the good point is that we have the knowledge, we have the data, and we have the people, the experts who know what to do. We have some precedents, international organizations, OECD, but even major powers such as European Union and the US, they have already undertaken very significant efforts to fight tax havens. Panama was just an outlier. It didn't abide by the rules.
I'm sure, forgive me.
It's not that far-fetched.
We will certainly be coming back to this, but we must leave it there. Thank you both very much indeed for joining us this afternoon. And that brings us to today's closing headlines. Labour says